In Bengal, where I grew up, rice is food. The everyday word for rice is bhat. But another word is onno, and onno also means food. When someone invites you to dinner, he'll say, একদিন আসবেন ভাত খেয়ে যাবেন. Come and eat bhat with us one day. Beggars in the streets of Calcutta in those days, when I was growing up, would ask for dumutu onno, fill my fists with rice. Mothers would talk in hushed voices about the fact that their children didn't eat enough bhat. And in movies, the camera will often pan to the long-suffering wife as she pushes away her plate of uneaten rice, while her husband hasn't really noticed. When a one-time Chief Minister of West Bengal, Mr. P.C. Sen, suggested that people should consider eating something other than rice, he was greeted with garlands of eggplants and plantains. His party lost the next election. Communism came to Bengal on the back of a promise of enough rice for everyone. In Punjab, they didn't have the same obsession with rice, except for that dish called rajma chawal, which to all appearances is just red beans and rice, but to all Punjabis represents the whole essence of motherhood. Punjabis love feeding people. Whether it's Gallipoli in 1916 or Najaf for 2018, whether it's war or disaster, along with the International Red Cross, the Médecins Sans Frontières, you'll see groups of turbaned men and women carrying large vats of food. These are the Sikhs, people from the land of the 5 rivers. And the act of feeding people, langar, is very much part of their religion. If you visit a Punjabi family, when you get up to go, someone will almost always say, roti kha ke jao. Stay for the rotis, which are typically served with some thick dal, some delicious vegetables, some ghee, some yogurt, and some wonderful pickle. Rotis, flatbreads made from either maize or wheat, are the staple of Punjabi food. Rotis build takat, that's strength, they will tell you, looking pointedly at my emaciated frame. I didn't dare tell them that when I was growing up, Bengalis firmly believed that rotis cause constipation. After all, rice is soft and rotis are hard, and it stands to reason that it should be harder to push out. And while we Bengalis are a valiant lot, we would have bodily thrown out the British had Mr. Gandhi not gotten in the way. There's nothing we fear more than constipation. Evenings in Punjab are lit up by the fire of the Sanja chulas, where the hot rotis are baked. The tongs used for picking up the rotis are also used for playing music, as in Bhangra, Punjab's perhaps most successful export, or the beautiful Gurbani Kirtans, which one will hear floating out of the many gurdwaras that dot the Punjabi countryside as the evening falls. In the winter, groups of men and women will huddle around the chula. Many songs will be sung and many rotis consumed. For a Bengali, it's hard to wrap one's head around the idea of too much rice. And yet, this is the problem Punjab has been fighting for many years. Punjab produces way too much rice for its own good. The problem is that rice is a water guzzler, and Punjab has very little rain. In fact, until the mid-19th century, most of it was a desert. Canals bringing water for Punjab's great rivers green the land, but it remained that maize, abstemious maize and not thirsty rice, was Punjab's favorite food. Makai ki roti and sarson ki saag flatbreads made from maize and mustard greens is Punjab's most famous meal. The story of rice in Punjab goes back to the 1960s. In the 1960s, famine was never very far from India. The kindness of strangers, PL 480 wheat from the US, for example, kept us half fed, but the policymakers were quite understandably concerned. The Green Revolution, new varieties of rice and wheat, which were much more productive, offered succor, but they needed irrigation. The government, to make it easier for the farmers, decreed that farmers did not need to pay for their electricity used in farming. And free electricity is pretty much free water. All you need to do is sink a pump and pump it out.
The strange story of Sardar Shardul Singh and Amar Das Man. Once there lived two rival zamindars. When the first bought a coach with a single horse, the other zamindar quickly got himself a carriage with two horses. So zamindar A bought two more horses and rode the streets of Calcutta in his three-horse handsome carriage. Zamindar B was in a fix. Even for a 19th century spoilt Calcutta zamindar, having a tiny Brougham carriage attached to four horses seemed a bit too ridiculous. So he came up with the ultimate idea in one-upmanship. It sealed any future rivalry. The story of Sardar Shardul Singh and Amar Das Man is somewhat similar. They have been friends and rivals since school. If one could dribble like Dhyanchand, the other was an ace drag flicker like Leslie Claudius. As they grew older, they both inherited vast pieces of land. Encouraged by free electricity, their rivalry transformed from who played better hockey to who could dig the deepest well. Gradually, the bore well went from 0 to 50 meters. And when it was roughly around 125 meters, the zebra came in the form of a heart attack. Shardul died the same night, thus ending the rivalry forever.
In urban India, it's customary to sentimentalize the traditional Indian peasant, which appropriately decoded means some combination of clueless, stodgy, and uncool. If the government was relying on the innate stodginess of the Indian peasant to save it from the consequences of making electricity free, it was very quickly proved wrong. The farmers figured out that when water's free, growing rice is a very good deal. And as a result, between 1970 and 2015, the fraction of land under rice went from 10% to 70%. The consequences for the water table, the underground reservoir of water that irrigation pumps out, was devastating. Between 1982 and 1987, the water table fell by 18 centimeters a year. That went up to 42 centimeters a year between 1997 and 2002, and an astonishing 75 centimeters, that's 2.5 feet a year between 2002 and 2006 as rice cultivation exploded. The average depth of the tube well they have to sink to get at the water has gone from less than 50 feet in the 1960s to over 125 feet in the 2010s. And the problem is that it's quite literally a race to the bottom. Each farmer who sinks his tube well a little bit deeper than his neighbors to get at the water table encourages the rest to do the same. As a result, the government of Punjab is projecting that water will run out by 2039. Then what? There are two reasons why Punjab is hardly the right place to grow rice. One is that when farmers sow rice in April and May, the weather is extremely hot and dry. Traditional rice cultivation requires rice to germinate in standing water. But water doesn't stand very long when it's hot and dry. It evaporates and it requires frequent irrigation. Punjab uses roughly 3 times the water per kilo of rice compared to some of the eastern states in India, despite the fact that Punjab has a lot less rain. In fact, it's worth saying that you're drinking a hell of a lot of water when you eat Punjabi rice, more than 5,000 liters per kilo, in fact. The second reason is that winter comes stronger and sooner in Punjab than most of India. And therefore, there's a rush after the rice is harvested in September and October to clear the field for the next sowing, wheat and maize, to make the rotis. To get there faster, Punjabi farmers have taken to burning rice stalks left behind in their fields, which is one reason why in late October, Delhi fills up with foul-smelling air full of murderous little particles. And the wealthy seek ways to be away. The rest, as usual, make do with prayers and sometimes masks. This kind of action at a distance is what economists call general equilibrium effects. You do one thing, thinking one way, and 1,000 other things change unexpectedly. Moreover, as Punjab pours its dwindling water supply into rice that the local population doesn't eat, the price of rice drifts down. The farmers get upset. We got into rice cultivation for the sake of the nation, damn it. The government promises to take it off their hands at a good price. Problem is that then the rest of the nation wants it too. The minimum support price for wheat and rice become the lifeblood of agriculture all over the country. The farmers abandon the cultivation of the red, brown and black millets that were the staple of the poor for centuries and now are only popular with the health-conscious, affluent gym rats who like their low glycemic index to grow tons and tons of rice and wheat. What does the government do with the many millions of tons of wheat and rice that is buying off the farmers at the minimum support price? Well, first, it tries to give it away. The Food Security Act of 2013 guarantees 75% of the population several kilos of wheat and rice a week at a nominal price. What happens if you can't even give away enough of these grains? Well, it piles up in poorly built godowns and the mice have a good time. The government, in trying to solve the food shortage, built one unstable edifice upon another. Free electricity is threatening to turn Punjab into a desert, while right now tons of grains rot in poorly built godowns and Delhi chokes on burnt rice stalks. Years pass. Then suddenly, it was reform time. Strangely, it was also the middle of the pandemic. The government passed a slew of new laws, removing this subsidy to electricity, banning burning of rice stalks, allowing the corporates who were previously not allowed to get into grain purchase to enter. All in the interest of the farmers, of course. The farmers were less sanguine. They protested, they walked all the way to Delhi, they blockaded roads. They sang songs, they shouted slogans, they baked rotis by the roadside. The government vacillated between trying to sound sympathetic and accusing the farmers of being terrorists. It first refused to back off and then agreed to rescind everything. Everything, that is, except the laws that allow the corporates to buy grains. Strangely, that was more important than the desertification of Punjab and the foul air in Delhi. That didn't make the farmers any less suspicious. They continued to protest. And so the standoff continues. The water table continues to fall, and there's no guarantee that the air will improve. In the meanwhile, middle age creeps upon us. Words like diabetes and glycemic index enter our vocabulary. The poor Mr. Sen was right, it turns out. We should eat something other than rice.